Welcome back to the Wilkinson Cameras channel. We're talking about the Sony A1 II today. We've also been testing the new FE28-70 f2 G Master lens, so do check that video out as well. There's a link below. It's been almost 4 years since the original A1 was released, and Sony have released a lot of new tech in their other models, including the A9 Mark III since then. So what's new in the Mark II? Well, there's quite a few improvements, as you'd expect in a flagship camera after so long. Stick around because we're going to tell you everything. We've shot loads of stills and video samples to really show you what this professional full frame camera is capable of, and we've tried to put some of its strengths to the test. We went out for the day in the Lake District with Beyond Aerial, who helps us to set up an aerial shoot inside a cave. Very cool, a little bit mad. Do check out their profile on the links below. And now on with the A1 Mark II. The A1 before it and this new Mark II model are designed to be the one camera that does everything. In the Sony lineup, you have a remarkable number of models to choose from, each with their own little niche, or niche to our American viewers. The Sony A1 is designed to excel in any situation and enable professionals and enthusiasts to be able to capture pretty much any genre in both stills and video. And at this point, I think it's important to note that the A1 was, and still is, an exceptionally good camera. And because of that, we're talking evolution rather than revolution with the Mark II. There are a lot of improvements and a lot of new features inherited from other models developed over the last few years, most notably the Sony A9 Mark III. But don't be expecting something completely revolutionary, because that would be a really hard task. Sony have taken something great and they've made it greater still.
The A1 Mark II combines resolution with 50.1 megapixel sensor, speed with 30 frames per second, new pre-capture options, 8K video, improved AI processing for advanced autofocus, and has much improved low light capabilities than the original A1. So it's not a low light killer like the A7S series, it's not the highest resolution sensor like the A7R series, and it's not purely about speed like the A9 series. It merges all of these together into one camera to rule them all. It's going to appeal to photographers shooting for sports or journalism, wildlife, weddings, portrait, and of course, hybrid creators who shoot all of these genres and more in both stills and video. It's for pros who need the best connectivity, the best AF, and the best of all worlds. So let's talk about the key features, new features and improvements that the Mark II brings. For image quality, we've got a 50.1 megapixel Exmor RS stacked CMOS sensor along with Sony's Bionz XR image processor. I actually suspect that this is the exact same sensor as the Mark I, but there's definitely been some improvements to low light performance and color reproduction. Speaking of sensors, whilst you're going to see the A1 II shares a lot of the same features as the A9 Mark III, a global shutter isn't one of them. Global shutters are incredible technology, but they do have limitations, specifically when it comes to dynamic range and low light performance. So I'm glad to see a standard stacked CMOS sensor in the A1 II. After all, we want this to perform well across most scenarios. Sony promise improved image quality at mid to high ISO ranges. With a high resolution sensor, you are of course going to compromise with low light performance, so it's nice to see that improving image quality at higher ISO has been achieved. We did some side-by-side testing in low light and we definitely saw improvements here. The lack of noise is actually very impressive for a sensor of this resolution. The difference in noise between the original A1 and the Mark II is incredibly noticeable. I shot ISO 2500, 4000, 6400 with the same settings on both cameras, and you can see a massive difference between the two.
It's quite ridiculous.
Yeah, I was very impressed with the low light performance, especially the AF/AE tracking in low light as well.
We've also got improved IBIS up to 8.5 stops at the centre of the sensor and up to 7 stops at the edge. There's two new composite RAW options. First up is NR, or noise reduction shooting settings. This makes it possible to achieve exceptionally high image quality with low noise by combining between 4 and 32 RAW images. This is also found on the A9 Mark III. Pixel shift multi-shooting uses between 4 and 16 pixel shifted images, which must be composited in post-production. But this allows you to achieve huge images up to 240 megapixels. Pixel shift is great for things like architecture, but it also has its uses for things like archival work. The same again with the NR feature. We have tested this, but we can't access the RAWs to show you in this video. Speed is a massive key feature for the A1, as we've already briefly mentioned, and speed would be nothing without incredible autofocus. The A1 Mark II, like the A1, has 759 phase detection AF points, covering 92% of the sensor. Combine this with the new AI processing unit and the ability to focus down to even -4 EV, and you've got a camera with incredible AF. You are not going to miss a single moment with the A1 Mark II. The new AI processing unit, which brings up-to-date autofocus, including improved real-time human eye detection, alongside improvements to other subject detection. Sony are claiming a 50% improvement to bird recognition accuracy. We didn't test this on this shoot. There's also animal, bird, insect, car, and aeroplane recognition as well.
A new feature to the Mark II is a new auto detection mode. The camera will determine what the subject is, and it means you don't have to pick one set subject. This would work well if you are shooting a mixture of subjects going from one to the next. I actually managed to get an example with this with my cat Lola. You can see in the Atmos footage that whichever of us is closest to the camera, the AF locks on straight away. And this was in auto mode with no specific subject priority, but if you wanted humans to be a priority in auto mode, then you can do this within the menu settings. It's a simple upgrade, but one that we like to see.
Vinny, you in the camera bag, buddy? Can you be quiet, please? I'm trying to film.
As we've said, speed is key for the A1 II. There's not been any change here. It's still 30 frames per second with full AF at full resolution 14-bit compressed RAW files. You can get up to 153 in these settings, or about 5-second bursts, which is plenty. And don't worry, because this is blackout free as well. But we did encounter some buffer issues here when shooting at 30 frames per second. But the autofocus was absolutely incredible. We had Jonathan shooting with the A1 alongside the A1 II, and the AF on the Mark II was visibly faster and incredibly accurate, much more than the older A1.
So I was actually standing behind them, holding a light up at this point, and I could see the difference between the cameras. Obviously Liv was using one, Jonathan was using the other. Yes. They were looking at their own stuff, but I could see just how much more responsive the Mark II was and how accurate that square was on her eye. And
it was incredible, wasn't it?
Yeah,
especially with the hoops going in front of her face.
Yeah.
The AF was just glued to her eye.
Yeah. But it was very, very, very good.
Yeah, we enjoyed that. Also, when I did a high burst mode on Lola, the AF detected the closest eye while she was moving her head, and you'll see in this example that it is pin sharp in every single shot.
An exciting new feature for the Mark II, which has been in some competitor brands for a while now, and we first saw for Sony on the A9 Mark III, is pre-capture. Our human reactions can be quite slow, so if a bird is taking off, we might be too slow to get the exact moment that it launches into the air. Pre-capture means that you've already recorded those frames just before you press the shutter, so it kind of allows you to go back in time. You can choose how far back as well, from 0.03 to a whole second. It's really, really clever, and it's invaluable, especially for wildlife photographers. We've also got what Sony call, they're very catchy, continuous shooting speed boost, which is also found on the A9 Mark III. What this very wordy title means is that you can switch between burst mode frame rates and back again at the touch of a button. So let's say that I'm shooting Jen, our model, at 10 frames per second. I can preset this button to 30 frames per second shooting and immediately switch to this mode. For video, we've got some upgrades, nothing groundbreaking, but some upgrades. They're nice to have and they certainly make life easier. So the headline features here, because the A1 was already a powerhouse when it came to video, and the A2 brings most of that and a little more with it. Starting of course with 8K 30 in 10-bit 420, 4K 60 10-bit 422, or 4K cropped 120 10-bit 422. You can of course shoot in Super 35 mode up to 60 frames per second as well. This is downsampled from 5.8K footage for really detailed results. Thanks to the stack sensor and incredibly fast readout, there is next to zero rolling shutter regardless of the resolution and frame rate that you're shooting at. You can also set up proxy recording in camera, which is going to save you, or Liv, a lot of time in post-production and give older computers a fighting chance when it comes to shooting up to 8K 30 or 4K 60. And just like in stills, the new AI processor improves autofocus, especially subject detection. As with stills, we found the AF in video to be remarkable.
Moving on to S-Log3 and colour reproduction, both have been improved and can now be more easily matched up to footage from Sony's Venice and Burano cinema cameras. And a new feature is the ability to import LUTs. Again, we've seen this on the A9 Mark III. Some more features also inherited from the A9 Mark III and some other models like the ZVE1 is auto-framing, soft skin effect and focus map. I'm really not convinced these features will be extensively used by A1 Mark II users, if I'm being honest, but it does make sense that their flagship camera would have every possible feature going. Existing features are breathing compensation for additional focus breathing minimization, where your lens may not have this physically designed into it. Other features are timecode sync, AF assist, HDMI raw output via a full-sized HDMI. For video stabilization, this is an area where Sony already really excel. We love the stabilization on our ZVE1. In fact, most of the B-roll that I shoot on it is handheld. I don't even think I've ever put it on a gimbal. Stabilization is just very good. And on the A1, you do of course have the very good IBIS already. Plus, there's a new dynamic active mode for super stable handheld shooting. The active and the dynamic active do crop into your image quite heavily, so do bear that in mind. For low light performance, the A1 II can focus down to -4 EV at ISO 100 with an f2 lens attached, so the new 28-70 f2 lens will be ideal for low light content. We actually managed to test this with the new lens, and focusing in low light was very, very good. To get the most out of dynamic range in video, shoot in S-Log3. This will save your highlights and shadows.
So let's look at some of the build of the A1 Mark II. Of course, it's dual card slots. It's dual CF Express Type A or dual SD. It would have been nice to see a Type B here, and we would expect a higher buffer if that was in there. There were rumours when this was, well, before launch, that this might come with a faster type of Type A card. I don't have confirmation just at this point if that's the case, but we did have those buffer problems. So either we weren't supplied the new fast card or the camera doesn't have that. We'll put a little note below just to confirm. There is a new high-speed 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port as well for super fast transfers of stills or video. You can use both SLS or TLS encryption for this as well, so that your data stays safe. And this is going to be great for professionals, especially in sports or photojournalists, for example. For both data transfer and in-camera charging, there is of course a USB-C port for rapid data transfer as well. Great news if you don't have a Type A card reader. The Wi-Fi remains at 5 GHz, and just as in the A1 before it and the A9 III, etc., you have various options for transfer to your FTP server. Build-wise, we've already mentioned it, but the LCD screen is massively improved thanks to it being a new 4-axis multi-angle monitor. We know how some people hate the flip-up or down screens, but others hate the traditional vari-angle. This thing does everything. It moves in every way you could possibly want a monitor to move. Again, we've already seen this in the A9 III, and I'd love to see this in every type of camera going forward, really. Speaking of screens, one thing that I don't personally love about Sony cameras is the lack of LED panel on the top plate, which shows me my settings here. I really miss that in this camera. This is a common feature across Nikon and Canon models and at this specification, and I'd love to see Sony bring this on board. It really speeds up my workflow. Liv is a native Sony shooter, so she doesn't really...
I don't expect it.
You don't miss it, do
no,
you?
and to be fair, when I use Nikon and Canon, I don't use it. I'd rather have more buttons, more custom buttons.
So yeah, different horses for different courses, I guess. New to the A9 II is a new electronic viewfinder. It's still 9.44 million dots, but it is brighter and better than the old one. It also comes with both a standard and deep eye cup in the box as standard. And speaking of box contents, this is also going to be supplied with 2 batteries and a dual battery charger. We found battery life to be surprisingly good considering we were shooting all day, loads of video, some 8K, some 4K 120 and lots of high-speed bursts. We only depleted 1 battery and then used about half of the other one, and that was a full day of shooting, about probably 8 hours in total. Yeah. But it does use the FZ100 battery used across most of the Sony full frame range, so good news if you've already got loads of spares.
Ergonomics have also been improved too. The grip has been redesigned for easier holding and better access to the shutter button. I think this may be the same body as the A9 Mark III. It certainly looks and feels like it as well. A C5 button has been added to the front of the camera. Incidentally, this is where the continuous shooting speed boost is assigned out of the box, and it's an absolute nightmare to use if you have long nails. Luckily, I did it for this shoot, and I do actually have them quite small.
I, on the other hand, had them quite long and it was quite annoying.
Another thing I found faffy to use was the modal. You have to press in the button and twist it. It's locked in place by default. I'd like to see this replaced with a clicking in and out button, which you have to click down to lock, similar to the custom exposure dial on the other side of the camera, or have a free movement as you choose.
This was another thing. It was a nightmare to use because my nails were quite long at the moment. And I know that you're gonna come at me in the comments for saying girly things like it's too difficult to use the camera because my nails are too long. But this is a reality for a lot of women and probably some men too. Like, it does need mentioning. There are professional female photographers out there and some of us have longer nails.
Yes. We always get comments like that. It's also compatible with the VG5 grip as used on the A9 Mark III. This does unfortunately mean that if you are upgrading from a Mark I and had the old grip, that you will also need to buy the new one.
Perhaps the most obvious and sensible change on the Mark II has been the introduction of the movie and still modes with their own set of submenus. Obviously this is much required when you compare it to the competition, and it's a great addition. It's worth spending the time customizing these modes as well so that you don't get your settings transferring across between the two. This will enable you to flick effortlessly between them. By default, Sony cameras are set to transfer the settings between video and stills functions. It's a real bugbear of mine. Why on earth would I want my photos being shot with S-Log and my video shutter speeds to match my still shutter speeds? It just makes no sense. So that's what's new with the A1 Mark II, and it's actually quite a lot of new features. Basically everything that Sony have developed over the last few years, excluding a global shutter, have been packed into this powerhouse of a camera, and that comes at a price, £6,300 at launch. Now, the A9 III is currently $6,099 in the UK, so that's just £200 less. And that's significant for the A9 III, because honestly, if I was spending that kind of money, I'd be buying the A1 Mark II. It does so much more, and it does it better. It's the ultimate professional full frame mirrorless camera, and it's an absolute bonus that it's in a very small form factor as well, especially when you compare it to other models like the Canon EOS R1 or the Nikon Z9, which is a comparison that we're probably going to leave for another video because this one is already a lot of information to take in.
It is a lot of information.
It's a lot of camera.
So what do you guys think? Do you own an A1 and will you be upgrading to the Mark II? Did you buy an A9 III and wish you'd have waited for this? What isn't included in this that you really wanted to see? Is it worth £2,000 more than the Canon EOS R5 Mark II? Please let us know in the comments because we'd love to hear from you. Do us, please don't.
Do us.
Do give us a thumbs up as well if you liked this video, and it does mean a lot to us.
It does. And remember that if you want to buy this in the UK or any other Sony camera, then head to wilkinson.co.uk. I might be a bit biased, but we offer really great service, part exchange and loads more. So do check us out, and that way Olivia and I can continue to make videos like this and doing silly things like setting up photo shoots inside caves. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to be the first to see a behind the scenes vlog of this shoot coming soon as well.